Okay, so now we've seen where the quadratic formula comes from. This thing, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. I wanted to show you how to use it to find zeros. But remember that your function has to be in standard form like this one. And in fact, this is easy. You could figure out the zeros lots of different ways here. Let's see here, 7 times 3 is 21, and 7 plus 3 is 10. So let's keep that in mind. But I want to identify the a term. The a term is 1. The b term, which is positive 10, and the c term, which is positive 21. And I'm just going to use the quadratic formula to solve this one. So I'm going to just plug these numbers into this formula one thing at a time, and I'm just going to crunch through. So I know the zeros of this function would be at negative b, so negative 10, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 10 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 21. And that whole thing needs to get divided by 2 times a, which is 1. And now look, it's just some PEMDAS. I just need to simplify this expression. But there are two zeros, and that's why we have the plus or minus. So it's negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 10 squared is 100, and negative 4 times 1 times 21 is negative 84, and then 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so I've simplified it a little bit. And 100 take away 84 is 16. So it's negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 16, and the whole thing divided by 2. And now to find the zeros, I just need to evaluate this. The plus or minus is because the square root of 16 is both positive and negative 4. So one of the zeros is when I do negative 10 plus 4 divided by 2. And the other one is when I do negative 10 minus 4 divided by 2, which is negative 6 divided by 2, or negative 3. And this would be negative 14 divided by 2, or negative 7. So that's how I got my two zeros. And remember, 7 times 3 is 21. 7 plus 3 is 10. Okay, so that's an example of how you use the quadratic formula to find the zeros. Now this one's a little bit more challenging, just a little bit. My a term is negative 2, my b term is negative 6, and my c term is positive 8. And similarly, I could factor this, but I'm going to show you the quadratic formula instead. So I'm going to start again by plugging things in, but I'm going to go a little bit slower, so b is negative 6. Remember, the very first part of the quadratic formula is negative b. Negative 6 is positive 6. So that's negative b, which is positive 6. Okay, so then I do plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared, minus 4 times a times c. 4 times negative 2 times 8. And the whole thing is going to be divided by 2 times a, or 2 times negative 2. So now I wanted to talk about this negative b being positive, but also there's something funny going on here. So negative 6 squared, let's rewrite this, 6 plus or minus square root of, negative 6 squared is still positive 36. When you square a number, negative or positive, you get a positive answer. So this should always be positive when you're doing this work. But now I do negative 4 times negative 2 times positive 8. See, this negative times a negative actually makes this into addition now, because the negative times a negative makes a positive. And let's see, 4 times 2 times 8 is 64. And then I'm supposed to divide all of that by negative 4. So the rest of this is pretty simple. 6 plus or minus the square root of 100, 36 and 64 is 100, divided by negative 4. The square root of 100 is both positive and negative 10. So I'm going to do 6 plus 10 divided by negative 4, and 6 minus 10 divided by negative 4. And let's see, 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4, and negative 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1. So I found the zeros using the quadratic formula. So practice those 4 problems for today's lesson.